Picture this. A moonlit summer night over southern Germany. 2 aircraft cruise at 36,000 feet. Their paths converging in the darkness. One carries 69 people. One is a cargo plane with just 2 pilots aboard. In the control tower below, a lone air traffic controller juggles multiple aircraft with failing equipment and no backup. In both cockpits, sophisticated collision avoidance systems activate, but conflicting instructions will force pilots to make an impossible choice in seconds. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call. Hooray! Hello and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I am your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm stay-at-home hubby Zach. Living every man's dream.
Living every man's dream. Maybe not every man's dream. Before we dive in, quick reminder to our listeners, if you have not done so, please take a moment, rate, review, subscribe, email us a screenshot, and I will send you a sticker. We do that. Our email is finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear from you. And on a more serious note, this episode is brutal. There's no sugarcoating it. This involves death of many children. And yeah.
Hate that
I know,
already.
I know. It was excruciating for me to research. It's going to be really hard for me to tell this story. This was one of the very first episodes that I wrote. And obviously we're almost a year in, and I have not told Zach this one yet because it's really hard.
Pulls heartstrings once you're talking about the little ones.
This one's brutal, guys. And I apologize, but it's an important episode because it changed some really important rules for aviation to avoid something like this happening again. So sources, ooh, what a fun sound. Sources, they are all listed in the show notes, but just a couple here off the top. The official German accident investigation report. I have cockpit voice recorder transcripts. I looked at court testimony. And then there is also a Mayday, air disasters of this one.
There's always a Mayday.
It is just as brutal to watch as it will be to listen to, maybe more so. All right, Zach. Summer 2002 in Ufa, a city in western Russia. The brightest students from across the Republic of Bashkortostan, the most accomplished scholars, gifted artists, championship athletes, have been selected for an extraordinary honor. A UNESCO, UNESCO, sponsored organization is sending them on a 2-week vacation near Barcelona, Spain.
That is one place on the list. I would love to go there.
Amazing. It's called The Gift of Life. It's a reward for exceptional achievement. And for these teenagers, it is the trip of a lifetime. Among them is 15-year-old Kirill Detrev, a painting prodigy who has been creating art since age 4.
Wow.
I know. So by 15, he has already had 2 public exhibitions.
Hats off.
Yeah, he's incredible. Before leaving for Spain, he starts a new painting. It's actually a landscape of the Bashkiran Mountains at sunset. And he plans to finish it when he returns. There's 12-year-old Alina Novikova, a rhythmic gymnast who's won several regional competitions. She's considered a future Olympic prospect. Russian
Already.
Olympic prospect. The girl's good. And this trip feels like validation for grueling hours of training. 45 children total, along with 8 adult chaperones, including 52-year-old Raisa Dutton, a beloved teacher from the Ufa School of Arts, who's known many of these students for years. She is maternal. She is strictly organized. The reason that the group stays so well behaved even when things go wrong. And things do go wrong. On June 29th, the group boards a train to Moscow for their connecting flight to Spain. But when they arrive at the airport, the travel agency has made a critical error. They've brought everyone to the wrong airport.
Oh. Well, that's not the fun way to start out a trip.
The children miss their flight. Oy, the kids are devastated. Parents back in Ufa are frustrated, but they're reassured that another flight will be arranged. While the agency scrambles to fix the mistake, the children spend 2 unexpected days in Moscow, staying at a hotel, visiting Red Square and the Kremlin, seeing the onion-domed churches that they've only seen in textbooks. This unforeseen travel oops becomes an adventure.
Children going chilled.
They are. They're bright-eyed. They're buying souvenirs. They're taking photos. Honestly, this ends up being 2 bonus days. It won't ultimately end up being that because this shapes their fate, which in a horrible way. But at the time, the kids are really viewing this as 2 bonus days in a really cool city. Finally, on July 1st, 2002, the agency charters a replacement flight. A Tupolev Tu-154M. So, is how that's pronounced.
Can you put your personal life aside for a moment, okay?
Oh boy. So think of it as the Russian equivalent of a Boeing 727. 3 engines mounted at the tail, and it is a very common aircraft throughout the former Soviet Union. Also boarding that day is the Kaloyev family. Kaloyev family. You guys, please, I'm doing my best here. This is, Russian is not my strongest language. Svetlana, her 10-year-old son, Konstantin, and her 4-year-old daughter, Diana. Got that one. They're heading to Barcelona to meet Vitaly, which is Svetlana's husband and the children's father, an architect finishing a construction project near the Spanish city. In the cockpit, we have a very experienced, very Russian crew. Get it. Captain Alexander Gross has been flying for over 30 years. But there is an unusual dynamic today. Sitting in the first officer's seat is Oleg Grigoriev, the airline's chief pilot.
Oh, wow.
Chief pilot, who is evaluating Captain Gross's performance. The normal first officer, Murat Itilov, has been displaced to the jump seat. Get back there. Like most modern aircraft, the Tupolev has a traffic collision avoidance system, which we know as TCAS.
Guineas.
The guinea pigs. This sophisticated computer constantly monitors airspace, listening for transponder signals from other aircraft. If it detects another plane on a collision course, it alerts both crews and it will tell them exactly what to do. It will tell one plane to climb, and it will tell the other plane to descend, ensuring that they never hit each other. TCAS was designed to be the last line of defense. If air traffic control fails, TCAS saves the day. At least that's the theory.
Supposed to.
Just before 11 p.m. Moscow time, on July 1st, 2002, Bashkirian Flight 2937 takes off, heading southwest to Spain. The children settle in, many preparing to sleep because it's an overnight flight. Behind them, Raisa likely makes one last check through the cabin, ensuring her students are comfortable.
And that they're all there.
You've got to do the head count. As the plane climbs toward its cruising altitude of 36,000 feet, which is right around 11 meters, 11,000 meters, and crossing into German airspace, none of them know that they are on a collision course with another aircraft coming from the opposite direction. Hundreds of miles away, in Bergamo, Italy, a Boeing 757 cargo plane prepares for departure. The DHL aircraft is heading for Brussels, Belgium, carrying only 2 people, year-old First Officer David Rivad, who is scheduled to fly the next leg, because it's a long flight. The DHL plane departs at 11:06 p.m., minutes after the Russian Tupolev leaves Moscow. Its flight path will take it north, over the Alps into German airspace, then continue to Belgium. For these experienced professionals, it's a routine night cargo run. So what they do? Normally, these 2 planes would never come anywhere near each other. Air traffic controllers would keep them very much separated, different altitudes, different routes. But tonight, a catastrophic series of failures is about to bring them far too close. To understand what happens next, we need to look at the ground, at the Zurich Area Control Center in Switzerland, operated by a company called Skyguide. This facility manages air traffic over southern Germany and northern Switzerland. Earlier that evening, the busy day shift ended and the night shift reported for work. Peter Nielsen, a 36-year-old Danish controller with 8 years of experience, is on duty. Normally, the center runs with multiple controllers, but tonight, there are only 2. Traffic is expected to be light. Around 11:10 p.m., Peter's colleague takes a break. Now,
So it's just Peter monitoring everything.
I ain't really good at math, but I do know that 2 and then one of them disappears means 1. Peter is solo.
It's at least less than 2 for sure.
Peter alone is responsible for all air traffic on 2 radar screens positioned right around 6 feet or 2 meters apart. He will have to physically move between them to monitor everything. These are not on 2 side-by-side monitors.
This man needs a rolly chair. Stat.
Then, 2 technicians arrive with authorization from Skyguide management to perform maintenance on the main radar system.
Oh, Jesus.
While they work, Peter's screens will operate slower than usual, and critically, the visual collision warning system is disabled. The system would normally give him a 2-minute advance warning if planes get what is considered dangerously close.
Uncomfortable.
Without it, Peter has to mentally calculate potential conflicts by watching radar tracks and estimating future positions.
But that he's also estimating off of a delayed
Yes.
screen.
And everything's delayed. This is exponentially harder and obviously more error prone. Then the engineers shut down the telephone system
This sounds like a recipe for disaster.
and they switch to a backup phone system. But no one verifies that the backup is working. So let's review the Swiss cheese of what has just happened. 1,
There's holes everywhere.
there are holes everywhere. 1, we only have a single controller on duty. Then 2, maintenance is being performed during live flight operations. Then they take down the critical safety systems and do not give an adequate backup. At this time, though, This seems routine operational choices for a quiet night.
Yeah, I assume that maintenance has to be done at some point, so...
At some point, it's got to get done. Hundreds of miles away, in Karlsruhe, Germany, another controller sits at his radar screen, watching a different sector. He's not responsible for the airspace where the Russian and the DHL planes are flying, but his screens show them anyway. As the Russian plane, filled with sleeping children, crosses into German airspace, and the DHL cargo plane climbs north over the Alps, both aircraft are at 36,000 feet. The man responsible for keeping them apart is working with degraded equipment. And the man who will spot the danger has no way to warn him. 'Cause of the phones.
Oh, yes. So he can't even phone over and say, hey, you've got this going on.
Because there are no phones.
Yeah, it does seem weird to... I understand maintenance has to happen, but I would say it probably makes more sense to do one system at a time.
By 11:30 p.m., Central European time, both planes are cruising at 36,000 feet. The Russian Tupolev flies westward over southern Germany. The DHL Boeing heads north from Italy. Their paths are converging. At the Zurich Control Center, Peter Nielsen faces increasing workload. Beyond monitoring the Russian and the DHL flights, he's also handling an Airbus A320, which is preparing to land at nearby Friedrichshafen Airport. And please forgive me, there's like an S in here. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I think it's
squiggle.
I think it's Friedrichshafen Airport. The pilot needs landing instructions, and Peter needs to coordinate with the tower. Anybody who has worked in sort of a high-stress environment, you can only have one priority. That is literally the definition of the word priority. Mm-hmm. It is one. So for him, it does make sense that right now, his priority is this plane that's landing. So he picks up the phone to call the Friedrichshafen Airport, and he calls the tower. It's dead. He tries again. Nothing. The backup phone system has failed, and no one told him. Meanwhile, the Friedrichshafen pilot is trying to reach Peter for landing clearance. He's up flying like, hello?
I need to come down now.
Then a Thai Airways flight calls in, needing instructions. So now he has two pilots from different flights trying to communicate with him. And the Thai Airways flight is needing instructions. So Peter bounces between two radar screens, which are 2 meters apart, handling multiple aircraft, unable to call for assistance. His collision warning system does not work. It has been disabled. What he does not see, the Russian airliner and the DHL cargo plane are headed toward the exact same spot. They are minutes away from each other, and they are traveling at a combined closing speed of over 1,300 kilometers per hour, which is greater than 800 miles per hour.
Wow.
They are covering more than 21 kilometers, which is 13 miles, every minute, this is kind of crazy, 370 meters or 1,200 feet per second.
Yeah, I mean, planes cruise pretty fast.
Oh my goodness. In Karlsruhe, the German controller spots it. So remember how there's another controller, and this is not technically an area that he is...
It's not his space.
Yes, but he sees it on his radar, and he is like, ho, ho, ha, at 11:33 p.m., 2 minutes before impact. He sees the two radar tracks converging, and he grabs his phone to call Peter.
Yeah. It's like, I'm seeing this. You have to be seeing this. What are you doing?
Yeah, but guess what, Zach?
His stuff doesn't work.
The phones don't work. International regulations prevent him from talking to the pilots directly.
See, and in my head, I was already thinking, like, you see it, call him. But he can't.
He's not allowed to call them. He can only contact air traffic control, which would be Peter. He tries again. Busy signal. And again. He will call 11 times in the next 2 minutes.
See, I have a problem with this. I understand rules are made to be broken, but also they exist. If I was actively calling and I was getting a busy signal, I would immediately think that something was wrong, and I wouldn't care if I was getting in trouble. I would contact one of the planes and be like, you need to go up.
Well, we're going to talk about it. Not right now, but we are going to talk about it. All that he can do, because of the rules, Zach's a rule breaker, but all he can do is watch helplessly as the two blips move closer together on his screen. At 11:34 p.m., the Russian pilots see. The guinea pigs are saying hello. At 11:34 p.m., the Russian pilots see the DHL plane appear on their TCAS display for the first time. They are concerned, but they can't tell for certain if it's at the same altitude. The distance between the aircraft is closing rapidly, and they can see that. Peter Nielsen is still focused on getting the flight that's trying to land down safely. Mm-hmm. When he finally looks back at his main radar screen, he is floored to see how close.
We should get some more pets.
I'm going to roast these guinea pigs.
Okay.
No, I can't. They're really cute.
Oh my God. Stop teasing me with it then.
So cute, but really loud. Okay, he is absolutely floored to see how close the Russian and the DHL planes have become. At 11:34 and 42 seconds, both planes' TCAS systems activate simultaneously. A computerized voice speaks in each cockpit, warning them of nearby traffic. In the DHL cockpit, the system quickly analyzes the situation and issues a command to descend, which sounds like descend. At least that's what it sounds like in all the...
in your head?
Yeah. No. In like the documentary stuff that I've watched. In the Russian cockpit, TCAS gives the opposite instruction. Climb, because that's how TCAS works. Each plane gets a different command.
It's designed to do this.
This coordination is the brilliance of TCAS. By giving opposite commands, it ensures that the planes will move away from each other.
So long as the pilots follow those instructions.
Well, Zach, at almost exactly the same moment, 11:34 and 56 seconds, Peter makes a fateful decision. He radios the German plane, the one that's got all of the kiddos on it, and he orders them to descend to 35,000 feet immediately. He tells them to expedite. There is crossing traffic. Now, the TCAS on the Russian plane said to go up. Captain Gross acknowledges and begins descending, but now the Russian crew faces a critical dilemma. TCAS says climb, air traffic controller says descend.
And I'm guessing at that moment, the controller has no way of knowing that TCAS has already kicked for him.
You are right, Zach. These are contradictory instructions, and they have seconds to decide which one they're going to follow. In the cockpit, the confusion is immediate. Our co-pilot points at the TCAS display, noting that the system is telling them to climb. But Captain Gross, following decades of Soviet-era training that prioritizes air traffic controllers above everything else, insists the controller is telling us to go down. We should go down. The debate lasts 8 seconds.
Critical seconds.
Yes. In Russian aviation culture, the controller's word is law. Pilots believe controllers have better information, a complete picture of the airspace. To disobey them is really unthinkable. The Russian crew continues their descent, following Peter's instructions rather than listening to TCAS. Meanwhile, in the DHL cockpit, Captain Kurth immediately follows his TCAS command. He disconnects the autopilot, and he pushes the nose down, descending rapidly. Peter, believing that he's resolved this conflict, turns his attention back to the landing plane. He is unaware that the DHL plane is also currently descending, and both aircraft are now descending toward each other at a combined closing speed of more than 800 miles per hour. The DHL pilots try to contact Zurich to report that they are following a TCAS descent, but Peter doesn't hear them. He's on the other frequency, dealing with a landing plane. At 11:35 and 24 seconds, the Russian pilots spot the DHL plane through their windscreen. Itkhalov's voice rises in alarm. It is below them, not above where it should be if their descent was working. In the DHL cockpit, Captain Kurth sees the Russian plane descending rapidly toward them. He pushes the control column hard forward, and he banks sharply right in a desperate last-second attempt to avoid a collision. At 11:35 and 32 seconds on the night of July 1st, 2002, the two aircraft collide at nearly a right angle. The impact is surgical and catastrophic. The vertical stabilizer, the tail of the DHL Boeing, slices through the fuselage of the Russian plane just behind the cockpit, tearing the plane open like a can opener. For the 69 people aboard the Russian plane, death is nearly instantaneous. The fuselage tears in half. The sudden decompression and structural failure kills most immediately. The aircraft breaks apart in midair. Pieces of wreckage begin their long fall to earth. For the DHL pilots, the collision is not the end. It's the beginning of a 2-minute nightmare. The impact shears off 80% of their vertical stabilizer, and without this critical component, the Boeing 757 has no directional stability. The plane immediately begins a violent yaw and enters a flat spin, and a yaw involves rotating the aircraft around its vertical axis, causing the nose to move left or right, which sounds absolutely terrifying. Captain Kurth and First Officer Rivad fight their controls. The hydraulic lines have been severed, making the controls first mushy, then completely stiff. They are flying a machine that is aerodynamically dead. There is no time for a Mayday call. They are too busy trying to do the impossible, control an aircraft that cannot be controlled. For approximately 120 seconds, they battle physics itself, the plane banking steeply, the nose dropping toward the earth. The stress of the airframe is so extreme that both engines tear away from the wings.
Just from the stress of the way they were going down, huh?
Yes. And that severs power to the flight recorders, and the black boxes actually stop recording, which I think is one of the first times that we've had that happen in a story.
Yeah, almost every time the black box has been fully intact.
Near the village of Teisdorf, Germany, the DHL Boeing strikes a forested area at a 70-degree downward angle. Both of our pilots die on impact. The Russian plane, its wreckage falls across a massive area centered around the town of Überlingen. Debris rains down over 90 square kilometers, which is 35 square miles, larger than Manhattan Island. I mean, that's a huge debris field, so that's massive.
Absolutely.
The main fuselage section crashes near a residential school for children with special needs. God, this story, this is a really hard one for me. Bruno and Stella Wegmüller, who run the school, witness the night sky turn orange-red with flames as pieces of aircraft fall to Earth with repeated detonations. And they quickly realize that this is not a thunderstorm, but something horrific. Within minutes, emergency services mobilize 6,000 people, searching for bodies and debris across the massive crash zone.
It's insane.
71 people are dead. 45 of them are children who just 2 days earlier were laughing and taking photos in Red Square, excited about their Spanish adventure. The recovery operation is a logistical nightmare. The crash site isn't a single location, but it's a corridor that's right around 20 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, which is 12 miles by just over 1 mile. Bodies and wreckage are scattered across gardens, fields, forests. First responders face scenes that will haunt them forever. And there is testimony of some of the first responders in the Mayday episode, and it is brutal. The bodies of children from Ufa lie in fields and gardens throughout the German countryside. The psychological toll on recovery workers is immense, and counseling services are actually provided for months after recovery. Back in Ufa, parents are receiving the worst news imaginable. The replacement flight carrying their children has crashed, and there are no survivors. Kirill's mother initially refuses to believe it. She clings to hope that somehow her son missed the plane, that there has been a mistake. When confirmation comes, she feels as though everything good in her life, everything connected to her son and his brilliant future as an artist, has been erased. Alina's mother nearly faints when she learns of the crash early in the morning. She finds herself alone in the kitchen, overwhelmed by grief. But one family story becomes uniquely tragic. Vitaly Kaloyev, the architect who is waiting for his family in Barcelona, is one of the first relatives to arrive at the crash site. Despite instructions that relatives should not participate in the search, he had to. He's so you. He reminds me of you. In an almost unbelievable twist of fate, he finds a pearl necklace in the debris, one that he recognizes as belonging to his 4-year-old daughter, Diana.
Nope.
Following this discovery through the wreckage field, he locates his daughter's body. And unlike most of the victims, Diana is remarkably intact. It looks like she's sleeping in a field of sunflowers. The mutilated bodies of his wife and his son won't be found until later. In Ufa, both Christian and Muslim communities are devastated. The city declares official days of mourning. Thousands attend memorial services. In the cemetery where 53 of the crash victims are buried, 2 double rows of gravestones stand. Christian Orthodox on one side, Muslim on the other, eerily reminiscent of the seating arrangement on the plane. At the Zurich Air Traffic Control Center, staff members are in shock. Work nearly comes to a standstill. Controllers describe colleagues crying, helpless, overwhelmed with sadness. For 3 weeks, the Zurich Center operates at reduced capacity. Peter Nielsen never works as an air traffic controller again. Colleagues describe him as a shell of a man, constantly replaying those 6 minutes in his head. He moves to an administrative role at Skyguide, but remains terrified of ever being near a radar screen again. In the days and weeks following the disaster, attention turns to finding answers. How did this happen? Who is responsible? And more importantly, could this have been prevented? Germany's Federal Bureau of Aircraft Accident Investigation, the BFU, leads the inquiry. Within 5 days, they've recovered both black boxes and they have begun understanding the sequence of events. What they discover isn't simple pilot error or controller negligence, but it is a web of systematic failures that created the perfect conditions for this disaster.
That Swiss cheese you love to talk about.
Oh, God, yeah. The collision occurred because both planes descended simultaneously. The DHL following its TCAS, the Russian plane following the controller's instructions. And this raises a crucial question: TCAS or air traffic controller?
I just stand by what I said before. If you get close enough to where TCAS has to warn you about something, I'm no longer worried about the controller because there's no way that they have the most information. Unless they were getting the live audio from your plane where TCAS is saying, do this.
That's fair. I mean, I think that's fair. When TCAS was introduced in the 1980s, no one clearly specified what pilots should do if TCAS instructions conflicted with air traffic controller instructions. Different countries developed different training philosophies. In Western countries, pilots were generally taught to prioritize TCAS. There you go, Zach. The computer has more current information, and it coordinates with the other aircraft. So in theory, if both aircraft listen to TCAS, then
you're good.
You're fine. You're good. But in Russia and other former Soviet countries, pilots were trained to obey air traffic controllers above everything else. The Soviet legacy instilled a culture where following authority was paramount. Pilots believed controllers had the complete picture, and to disobey them was dangerous and insubordinate. This cultural difference proved fatal on July 1st, 2002. Even more troubling, this wasn't the first time that this confusion nearly caused a catastrophe. In January 2001, only 18 months before this incident, 2 jumbo jets with 677 people aboard nearly collided over Japan when one crew followed the controller instead of TCAS. Do you remember us telling that story?
I'm not sure that I don't remember talking about
the Japanese Airlines one?
Well, I remember the Japanese Airlines story, but I don't remember someone following TCAS and someone following a controller.
We told that story, folks. Go ahead and listen to that one if you haven't yet. Spoiler alert, they don't crash, but it's still it's still a good one to listen to. Obviously, it's a great one to listen to because they didn't crash, and that's great. The violent last-second avoidance maneuver did injure over 100 passengers.
Yes. Okay.
There we go. Because one went up and one went down.
Yeah, they got lucky playing a game of chicken, basically.
They did.
That's what that was.
That incident was seconds away from being the worst plane crash in aviation history. Japan successfully requested that the International Civil Aviation Organization issue clear guidance on TCAS procedures. But they waited 18 months to respond. And by then, this incident had already happened.
I'd be so pissed if I was the person that sent off that letter.
Unbelievable.
Like, hey guys, we really need to figure this out. And like, we'll get to our mail later.
It's crazy. The German investigators took the extraordinary step of directly criticizing ICAO in their final report, saying y'all dropped the fucking ball. No, they didn't say that. They stated that vague international regulations about TCAS use were a primary contributing cause.
I'm glad they didn't just try to put that on Peter.
No, we're going to get into the full breakdown of who gets blamed for what and why and the whole 9 yards. So the investigation also found serious deficiencies in Skyguide's operations. First, they routinely allowed a single controller to manage entire airspace during night shifts, despite international recommendations against this practice. However, recommendations are just recommendations.
That is not rule. That is not law. That is just, we think you should do this.
Second, they conducted maintenance on critical safety systems, the phone network,
all
and
at
the
the same time.
Collision warning system. Yes.
Simultaneous.
And during live operations. If you're going to do that shit, make sure there are no planes flying.
Well, and that is my curiosity that I don't quite know how to critique it, because is there ever really a time where there's nothing happening at an airport?
I don't know.
I know not a lot of planes take off after midnight and it's pretty slow, but I mean, there's always a chance that somebody could have an emergency and get diverted towards you, or...
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. That is hard to critique. So if you're going to do that, you need to test and make sure there's adequate backup.
Yeah.
And they did not do that.
Instead, they just said, I plugged it in. Should be fine.
Correct. In fact, they didn't even tell him that his safety nets had been removed. They just did what they did. And he goes to pick up a phone and it's not working. That's crazy. Third, their organizational culture tolerated shortcuts and efficiency over redundancy, creating conditions where disaster was inevitable. The report concluded the crash had two immediate causes. 1, Peter Nielsen was too late noticing the danger. 2, the Russian crew made the wrong choice following him over TCAS. But beyond these direct causes, the report emphasized that this was a system accident, a disaster occurring because multiple safety barriers failed simultaneously. The report's release in May 2004 led to significant changes. So, remember that change that we were waiting 18 months for?
I bet it got changed.
Good old ICAO. Yeah, well, they finally issued clear guidance. Pilots must always prioritize TCAS. Period. No exceptions. That's it. TCAS.
Yeah. And like we said, there's no way for a flight controller to have better information unless they were already listening to the live audio coming through a plane where TCAS gave them information.
And here, I completely agree with you, Zach. Completely. Because if both parties follow the instructions that they are receiving from TCAS, you are guaranteed to not have an incident. So this guidance from ICAO is now standard worldwide.
I just want to make a point that this is the first time you've ever completely agreed with me.
I completely agree with you. It's the first time in our entire relationship.
That's what I just said.
Wow, 6 years, and this is it. Write it down. Skyguide implemented numerous procedural changes, including never allowing a single controller at work alone.
So in theory, they need to at least have 3 on shift so that when somebody's taking a break, there's 2 more there.
Yep. And they prohibited maintenance on critical systems during live operations. So I don't know.
At some point, something shuts down.
But for the families of the victims, obviously, I mean, for us, it's always comforting to know that from catastrophe and all these horrible things, something good can come from it. But God damn, these parents just lost their kids and they want someone to take responsibility and they want justice. Skyguide acknowledged its role and expressed regret. And the families were like, okay, cute. Da fuck. And the criminal proceedings began, moving slowly through the Swiss legal system. In 2007, 5 years after this crash, a Swiss court finally convicted 4 Skyguide employees of homicide by negligence. 3 mid-level managers received 12-month suspended sentences. A project manager was fined 13,500 Swiss francs. The court ruled they had tolerated a culture of negligence that made the disaster inevitable. But Peter Nielsen was not convicted.
Well, that does make me feel a little bit better. Yes, he had his part in there, but also in theory, if the pilots had just radioed back, hey, TCAS just told us this, instead of saying, okay, I will go down, it's not just on Peter.
And again, I completely agree with you.
Oh, shit.
I think that Peter was put in a truly impossible situation. And he was never wanting harm to come
Absolutely.
to any plane. He had done his job, and people that are interviewed in some of the documentaries that are in our source notes said that he was an incredible employee. He was very good at his job, and he's a victim. He is a victim of this, and
because now he has to live with it.
He has to live with this. The court recognized that he had been placed in an impossible situation by his employers. But for many families, this outcome felt inadequate. Managers received light sentences, but nobody seemed truly accountable for 71 deaths.
I do kind of agree based on the numbers that came out.
Well, for one man, one dad, the legal system was moving too slowly, and no punishment would ever be sufficient. For 2 years after the crash, Vitaly Kaloyev lived with unbearable grief. He moved into a cemetery, growing a long beard, obsessing over photographs of his dead children. While other families tried to move forward, Vitaly's pain calcified into something much darker.
Rage.
He attended memorial services in Überlingen, reportedly offended that no one from Skyguide offered a personal apology. He became obsessed with Peter Nielsen, the controller whose voice had given that fateful instruction. And in his mind, Peter was the man who massacred his family. On February 24th, 2004, he traveled to Switzerland. He'd hired a private investigator to locate Peter's home address. He knocked on a neighbor's door, waving a piece of paper with Peter's name on it. The neighbor pointed to Peter's house, but instead of knocking immediately, he sat down in the garden to wait. When Peter came outside that evening around 5 p.m., Vitaly stood and approached him. He reached into his pocket and he pulled out photographs, images of his children's bodies in their coffin, and he held them out to Peter, forcing him to look at what had happened. According to Vitaly's later testimony, Peter, likely in shock and also not understanding Russian, pushed the photographs away, and something inside Vitaly snapped. He pulled a jackknife with a 14-centimeter blade, which is about 5.5 inches, and he attacked Peter, stabbing him multiple times in the chest and the abdomen. Peter's wife was inside the house with their 3 children. She heard a scream. Peter died at his home in front of his family. Vitaly made no attempt to flee. He walked back to his hotel, and he was arrested later the next day. He was charged with intentional killing, which is a Swiss charge between murder and manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He served only 3.5 years. In 2007, he was released early, a decision influenced by his psychological state and the extreme circumstances of his loss. Upon his return to Russia, he was greeted by supporters at the airport.
I can't say that I'm completely shocked. I don't know. That's a It's a hard one to swallow. I think about as a father, I would probably also want some kind of revenge if something happened to my family. But then knowing the whole story, Peter did what he could with what he had, and just what he had was inadequate.
And Vitaly, who's mourning the loss of children, which I can't even begin to imagine. I have so much anxiety about the thought of something happening to Arya. But he murdered a man in cold blood, was released 3.5 years later, was celebrated when he returned, and then he actually was later appointed Deputy Minister of Construction in North Ossetia. And Peter was murdered on his front doorstep in front of his wife and 3 kids.
To be fair, he's not doing fine, but I understand.
He gets to live.
Yeah.
He gets to live. What makes Peter's murder particularly tragic is that he was not responsible for this accident. Mm-hmm. And I just want that on the record formally. A colleague later reflected that Peter deeply loved his wife and his children. His murder became yet another tragedy layered on top of this already very tragic case. Proof that the disaster's victims extended far beyond the 71 who died in the sky. And today, in Überlingen, a memorial stands designed by artist Andrea Samseil. I am so sorry, Andrea. It was dedicated on May 3rd, 2004, and it consists of 71 stainless steel spheres, one for each victim. It's called the Torn Pearl Necklace. Oh, yep, Zach's out. I got him.
I was out a long time ago.
And it's inspired by the necklace that was found near the 4-year-old's body. Every July 1st, families from Ufa travel to Germany. They lay flowers at the memorial spheres and they visit the exact spots in the forest where their children were found. It is a pilgrimage of grief that continues more than 2 decades later. In Kirill's home, his unfinished painting of the Bashkirian mountains at sunset remains as he left it. It's a symbol of all the potential lost that night. And for his mother, everything good in her life has been connected to her son and his future. With him gone, she felt that she had nothing left. The saddest aspect of this crash is that it was entirely preventable. Had the children not missed their original flight, had there been 2 controllers on duty, had the phone system worked, had international TCAS regulations been implemented, any of those could have changed the outcome. And instead, 71 people lost their lives. And Zach, that's the story that I wrote a year ago and have been putting off telling you because it just sucks. This one just sucks, guys. I'm so sorry.
You know, I can deal with a lot of death, but you're bringing in all the children. This is my least favorite story.
I know. I mean, I don't like this story, obviously. This one sucks. It's horrible. If you
hated this story as much as I,
if you hated this story, please rate, but don't rate.
Don't rate poorly. We didn't do a terrible job. It's just a shit story that needs to be told.
I'm so sorry. Review, subscribe. Go ahead and email us, finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. We'll send you a sticker. And join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. And I promise, guys, the next one, I don't do multiple heavy ones like this in a row. I have to give us some
time to breathe.
I will give us some time to breathe. So next episode, this one sucks. Next one won't. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination. Goodbye.